title of today's lecture is A Totally New Approach to Education. A totally new approach to education. Now, that's a very bold claim, very bold. But let's start off by looking at our current educational system, and then I'm going to contrast it to the new educational system that I'm proposing, that I'm implementing, a totally new approach to education. And right now, in terms of higher education, you have an AA, a BA, a BS, an MA, a PhD, you have an MD. But we're going to focus on the traditional AA, BA, MA, and PhDs. AA, Associate of Arts, a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, an MA, a Master of Arts, and a PhD, a Doctor of Philosophy, which is, by the way, what I have. I had my MA at Columbia University in 1965, and then in 1969 at the University of Texas I had my PhD. It was a long ordeal, hard work. I was ready to retire after I finished my PhD. It was grueling. So I know the system, and I've taught at universities. I've taught at Barnard College. I've taught at University of California in San Diego, Palomar College, Columbia College. So I've experienced at the academic level as well as being a student. I've been a teacher and also an adjunct associate professor at San Diego State University. So I'm very qualified to speak on the existing system and on the changes that need to be made. Let's look at Associate of Arts to begin with, the AA degree. Now, most people go, well, why are we calling it Associate of Arts? What do you mean associate and arts? A person might say, I'm studying computer. Why was it even called arts? Associate of Arts. So the title itself, for many people, for most people, really doesn't even have any meaning. Associate of Arts. I mean, a very small percentage are going into art as defined by art today. Then you have BA, a Bachelor of Arts. The person said, well, what does having to be a bachelor have to do with my education? As a matter of fact, I'm not even a bachelor. I'm a married woman. I'm a married man. Why bachelor? I'm sure it had a different meaning. There's an archaic meaning to going back some period of time. But for most people, if you really think of the title, AA and now a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, and the person's saying, well, I'm getting my degree in biology. It's not even arts. Or I'm getting my degree in communication. Or I'm getting my degree in electronics. I mean, I'm getting my degree in psychology. You know, why arts? Why, bachelor and then arts? So neither term for people, if you really think about it, for most people. And I've been through the system, and it was never explained to me even, and I'm sure there is an explanation that goes way back. And again, it's just a symbol, a metaphor for the irrelevance of the current educational system, which is why I've come up and been inspired to present a totally new educational system. Let's go to the Master of Arts, an MA. The person says, well, Master of Arts, I'm Master in Psychology. It's not an art, it's a science. But like me, I have an MA. I have an MA in psychology. Well, it was really experimental psychology. A lot of my work was in scientific method. I was not in the arts. Master, okay, you can say I'm master of what I was doing. I had some mastery, but especially the word arts. Now, PhD, Doctor of Philosophy. Somebody says, well, I'm not a doctor of philosophy. I'm a physicist. I'm an engineer. I got a PhD in engineering. I'm not a philosopher. I'm an engineer. But yet it's still called Doctor of Philosophy. So I only present this to you to show you that the actual degree titles themselves show the archaic nature, and it's a metaphor for just how out of date the system is. So I'm proposing an educational system where there is no AA, BA, MA, or PhD, a totally new way of delineating degrees of knowledge. And that's what we're going to be calling it, degrees of knowledge. It's going to be DK, DK 1 through DK 9. But we're going to go into what that means. But at this point, I just wanted to address the archaic nature of the nomenclature, which, believe me, is a metaphor for the archaic nature of the whole educational system. Right now, I want to open up for any comments or questions that you might have on this nomenclature, AA, BA, MA, and PhD. I'm sure these are concepts that you haven't thought about. Many of you who are listening have one of these degrees, and I'm sure never even thought about what it means. What is your reaction to this?
Hi, Doc. It's Antoinette. I'm sorry, I just joined the call about a few minutes ago.
Yes, Anto. What are your thoughts about the archaic nature of these titles that people, degrees that people get with the names as a metaphor for the archaic nature of our educational system as it currently exists?
Well, you may have that degree, and you may have the title that goes with it, but I don't feel that that exactly gives you a true understanding or a true depth of what this person's knowledge. Because knowledge and education is far more than just getting that degree.
That's always true. That's
and,
completely
and
true.
that title.
Certainly, the title, you don't really know what the person knows. You may have some general idea they have some knowledge in that area, but we're going to talk about even what it means to have knowledge. We're going to get into that concept in a minute. To have knowledge or get an education. I'm going to talk to you how wrong those ideas are. Totally wrong. Uh, Mary, what are your thoughts about the archaic nature of the nomenclature itself?
You mean about all the degrees?
Yeah, yeah, Associate of Arts, Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts, Doctor of Philosophy.
So when I started off in nursing over 30 years ago, I got not associate degree, but a diploma degree. It went 3 years, I got the best schooling from the nursing degree schools. Now the hospitals are requiring now, and they only hire BSN or higher for nursing. So it's
A BSN, a Bachelor of Science in Nursing?
right.
Okay. So it's a BS, a Bachelor of Science. Well, let's look at that for a moment. What does a bachelor's person? Well, what does bachelor mean? Why bachelor? I mean, certainly a married person could be in there. Person, what is bachelor? Sure, it has some meaning, but I don't know of anybody who knows what the meaning of bachelor is in an educational sense.
I don't know either, but all I know is the Bachelor of Science of Nursing. It's like
Well, look at this. People are spending huge, one of the biggest investments of their lives, and don't even understand what the degree means in terms of literal meaning. Bachelor, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Science in Nursing. The word bachelor, science we understand, nursing we understand, but bachelor. Same with Master of Arts, MA, Master of Arts. Where does the arts come from? Lisa, what is your reaction to this terminology?
Can I just listen?
Sure, please listen. I'll leave you. Okay.
I'm gonna.
Okay, Hugh, what are your thoughts about that nomenclature?
The system in place.
The system in place. Well, I want to point out that it's a nomenclature, an archaic nomenclature, that's a metaphor for the archaic nature of the system. That's what I'm putting out to you, and I'm going to demonstrate my point, and we're going to move to a totally new approach to education. Now, let's talk about when people say, get an education. You've all heard that expression. You have to get a good education. Get a good education. I have an education. She has a great education. Well, what does it mean to have an education? To get an education? What does that mean? Let's say, for example, somebody learned a lot of information in a certain topic. Well, typically within a year, you don't remember most of it. 2 years, you might not even remember you had the class. So you had the education, and you lost the education. You don't remember it. So what does it mean to have an education? Now, let's say a person gets a brain concussion, gets hit on the head, forgets a lot of things. Well, they lost their education. So you can't say you have an education. You get an education. Or let's say somebody, God forbid, gets Alzheimer's or has dementia. They lost their education. Person went to school for 50 years and has all kinds of degrees, and then they lost their education because they certainly don't have it. When you have that dementia or you have a brain concussion, you certainly don't have that education, do you? So how can you even talk about get an education, have an education? It's an archaic term. It's a term that's inaccurate. It's a term that's very misleading. You can't have an education. Oh, he had a great education. Well, what if he forgot everything? You know, somebody might have just crammed the night before, studied, done well on the test. So he certainly had an education that day. In whatever the subject was, he had an education 10 years ago in his zoology class, but he doesn't know zoology. You can't say he has an education. You could say he had an education. He knew that material 10 years ago, but he doesn't have it now. And so it can be said of most of what we learn. Not all, but most of what we learn. So you can't really have an education, get an education. And furthermore, certainly your education, your true education, begins with your parents. That's really setting a tone for what you're going to learn in life. You probably don't know this, but there's a school for presidents, for future presidents. You probably didn't know that. Well, they learn from their parents. We have 2 presidents whose sons became presidents, Adams and Bush. So their sons went to presidency school. Now, they certainly didn't take any class in presidency in this. They didn't say, I'm going to take a class on how to be the president. Here, the most important position in the world, and no one took a class on how to be president of the United States. Their class was just knowing their fathers. That was the class, the most important position. No one had a class on how to be a president of the United States. They may have experiences as a governor or a senator, but so they have experience in politics, but they never, ever had a class on how to be a president of the United States. But the 2 whose fathers, they learned there. They were groomed for it, their fathers, they learned from their fathers. And typically, historically, the apprenticeship system, you're learning from an early age. If your parents were in business for themselves, you'll be more comfortable in being an entrepreneur. Now, we have to look also of the goal of the education. Certainly, many people talk about, well, you need an education to get a good job. So you got to get an education, which is a wrong concept. The correct concept is there's an integration of the educational process. And the new system involves an integration of the educational process. So in the new education, a totally new approach to education, you don't get an education, and you certainly never have an education. There's an integration of the educational process into your being. An integration of the educational process into your being. Now, I want to stop with that idea. I want to see your reaction, whether you agree or disagree with the idea is you really don't get an education, you really don't have an education, that it's really an integration process, because you can certainly lose whatever you lost, both because of forgetting or injuries or dementia. Mary, do you agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I'm not sure if I have any thoughts right now, but.
But it strikes a chord of truth with you.
Pardon me?
It strikes a chord of truth to you.
Yeah.
Okay, Antoinette, does it strike a chord of truth to you, or do you have some agreements or disagreements with that concept?
Oh, no, absolutely. It does definitely strike a chord of truth, and I agree with that concept. I agree. I think we get an education every day of our life in certain areas, but we don't necessarily have it for different segments of our life. I think we'll go through different segments, and we learn something, we need to learn it for that time. We may keep it with